Yeah. Hmm. Sun is up, the drinks are hot, and now it's time for our first cup. Today, no record. So, recently I took on a side gig. You know, this is what happens in the life of an entrepreneur sometimes, especially one who has financial needs that their family has. Now, this isn't the first time that I've done this. Last time I worked a side gig for any period of time was probably about a decade ago. I drove for Lyft, the ride sharing service, and it was an interesting experience. I got to see a lot of Los Angeles County and some of San Diego County. The pay was pretty decent. Um, got exposed to a lot of topless people making out in my back seat, as one does, right? But this go round, Lyft really wasn't cutting it. The culture and pay around ride shares have gone totally off base. Um, wasn't worth it. So I looked around and I'm like, well, what's something that I still have a decent amount of control over my schedule on? What's something, that, needs people? And what's something I've never done before? And I came to process serving, of all things. For those of you who don't know what a process server is, if you've ever seen in like a TV or movie where someone, shows up and to someone's home or place of work and says, here's some legal paperwork, you've been served. It's that sort of thing. It's not nearly as dramatic as that, but yeah, um, you know, it's pretty great. I get to see again a lot of LA County, and I get to see a lot of things that I wouldn't have otherwise. Right? Like for instance, a few weeks ago, got out of my car to do this one delivery, and smelled the air, and it smelled like cold fire. Like if you've ever been near a campfire and it's like just kind of cold and out, like the morning after. You know what I'm talking about. But this, it wasn't just cold fire. It had this kind of like mechanically and chemically smell. It was just in the air, right? But I'm looking around and I'm like, I can't see where it's coming from. Like, oh, whatever. Look at the address on the slip. Start finding it. It's like a mother-in-law unit's in the back. And as I go into the back of this bigger building, there it is, just like a burned out house, right? There's charred appliances in the front yard. There's a like a weight bench that's like got the foam on the seat like burned off. There's a water heater that's just scorched on one side. And this house, it's just literally burned down to like the support beams. And there's just this chemically, electrical smell coming from it. You know? So I took a photo. Thankfully, the address plate was still intact, so I was able to take that photo and move on. You know? Uh, Other stuff's happened too. Things like you're walking up to an apartment and it sounds alive, and people inside and all sorts of stuff going on, and dun, 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 there I am, and all of a sudden everything's dead. No sound whatsoever. Nothing going on inside. I'll dial a phone number again that's on the slip, and I'll hear a phone going off somewhere in the back, and then the ringer just shut down. And also get the other stuff too. The people who get aggressive or make threats, physically or otherwise, right? Like the people who want to shoot the messenger, as it were. That's part of it too. But the really interesting part to me, part that I'm thinking about today, is something that happens more than all of those kinds of instances put together. Hmm. And that is people who are just good people in that moment when I show up at their door, right? I've done some 80 something of these jobs at this point. And I remember the first one that I encountered, this was like, 7 or 8, so like early on, right? Go to this woman's house, it's like, you know, 10ish in the morning. I show up there and there's no answer at the door, and so I get on the phone and she answers, and I tell her, hi, I'm here to give you some paperwork and process server. And she's like, okay, cool. I'll be right there. And she comes to the door and she's got this like sort of dejected look on her face, but she's like, I know what this is, but thank you for bringing it to me. Hmm. Oh, of course, you're welcome. Like, yeah, like, I know you're doing your job. I just want you to know that, like, I appreciate you bringing it to me. And just, like, in my head, one, like, how many process servers have you seen? But two, this is really interesting. This is really unique, right? Like, just thankful. But it turned out it wasn't unique. It happens at about that same frequency, like one every 7 or 8. There's just someone who's pleasant and thankful and totally chill about it all. They're like very human, very good about it. And that got me thinking, right? Because when you're doing this job, like you have to take photos of where you've been so you can kind of prove to the court that like yes, you made a good effort to go to this address and you attempted to get into it in good faith. You attempted to get the paperwork to the person in good faith, right? But when you take those photos, like, well, one, you don't take video, right? And two, like the professional standards that are there too is like, the photos are supposed to be very tailored, right? You're only supposed to take like photos of like the address, like things that prove that you were there. You don't want to take photos of people, especially you don't want to take photos of people who aren't related to the paperwork. You don't even want to take like photos of like other cars or stuff, right? Like you just very, very, very narrowly tailored, right? And it occurred to me that the people who are kind of douchebags, like, well, yeah, in your affidavit, you're like, yeah, the person was a little bit of a jerk, right? But it occurred to me that unless I wrote down the same sort of data for the people who were cool, nobody would know that, right? And in a lot of these cases, right, I don't read the paperwork, but most of the time these people are defendants in cases, right? And it's like, man, there's just a lot here that just I can't record a video like when I go up to serve someone. I can't record a I can't take a photo of them smiling or thanking me. Like the only thing I can do is just kind of notate it in the notes. And the more I thought about that, the more I'm like, there's actually a lot of that in life where people are good or they're human or they're, you know, just generally pleasant about things, where they don't shoot the messenger, where they sure are doing what they should be, but that doesn't mean that it's not worthy of noticing, right? And as someone who like in my day job, my head is inside data so often, right? Looking at trends, looking at data, trying to figure out if they're real, trying to figure out if they're fake, designing towards a trend or designing away from it, or all these things like that. But if you don't if you don't note down when people are being good, it's not going to be noted down. All the other stuff, all the bad stuff, that's noted down all the damn time, right? Um, Social media, blogs, videos, right? Um, but yeah, there are people out there doing the good thing, the human thing, the right thing, and they don't get any sort of fanfare or anything. Um, but they've impacted me, right, in this side job, uh, and they've probably impacted you too, like the people who are out there doing good. Um, they've impacted you. That guy's muffler is impacting me right now, right? Um, I mean, that's the point, right? Like the people who have the people who are doing this stuff get the attention because they're loud and they're annoying and they're wrong or doing, bad stuff. But the good people are out there and they're impacting you also, just like they're impacting me. And they're having this impact, even if there is no record. Hmm. That said, please remember that no matter what you've heard or what I've said, death comes for us all. A closed mouth never gets fed. Take care of yourselves, and we'll speak again soon.